Welcome back to What Did China Do Today? In this video, we're going to look at the brand new Qwen Image Edit 2511. This is a successor to the previous Qwen Image Edit 2509 model, which when it was released was largely considered a Nano Banana alternative. And based on what Qwen Image Edit 2511 has to offer, it seems like we very much may have a similar situation. Now, a lot of this is in Chinese, so obviously I'm not Chinese, I can't read this, but we can infer a lot from the demo images that they have here, and there are some cool things I really wanted to point out. The first big thing that they're showing off is improved character consistency. Now, I think this is the big one when it comes to models like this and Nano Banana. When we talk about consistent characters, like I've said in other videos, there's two ways we can go about it. The first is with models like Nano Banana, Qwen, or Seedream, providing a reference image of our character and creating new images with those models. Or alternatively, you could create your own LoRa dataset and train a model on a very specific person. Now, keep in mind that with this new 2511, they do boast about integrated LoRa capabilities. Now, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what they mean by that. If anybody knows in the comments, definitely let me know. I'm a little curious on what exactly that means. We were able to have LoRa's with Qwen Image 2509, and it seems that that trend is continuing here with 2511. But that in mind, you very well may even be able to train Qwen Image Edit 2511 on your character as well as other state-of-the-art models. So again, character consistency looks pretty good. We can take a look at this on the big screen and it definitely looks like the same character, I would say. It's also really interesting how it inferred the lighting of the first picture and kind of adapted her skin to match the new lighting, the new kind of studio light. So pretty great result there. Now this one is pretty interesting. So you can keep specific poses and add that person to a new scene. Now I gotta be honest, not entirely impressed with what I'm seeing here. I mean, granted, if we could read the prompt, it maybe would be a little bit different. But yeah, the coloring, the oversaturation is kind of intense here. And I will say that this image doesn't necessarily look like it's on the wall. It almost looks like it was amateurly added in Photoshop or something. So again, not a great overall output, I don't think, but definitely representative of maybe character consistency capability. This is another result that's pretty cool when we talk about character consistency. What I think is really impressive about this too, if we look at the bottom of her shirt, right, it almost looks like there's some sort of bear holding a heart. We can tell that it's kind of a Christmas themed sweater. And so if we look in the new generation, we can see that that detail has been maintained, which is really impressive. Even down to the color of the strap on the teddy bear, even the look of the teddy bear, like those are definitely the same, I would say. So overall, this is a pretty cool result, I gotta be honest. They also talk about multi-person consistency. Now this is one that I really wanted to call out because I think with Qwen Image Edit 2509, we were seeing a lot of kind of plastic skin there, and there are ways to get around that with that model, but we can kind of see that that trend still remains. If we look at both of these input images, there's not too much detail to their skin, right? I think standalone, these are fine and pretty convincing, especially this gentleman here. But when we look at the output from Qwen Image 2511, it almost looks like we went down in quality but up in clarity, which is causing this kind of weird skin issue. Now again, on this channel we've talked about skin refinement a lot. We even have our own website dedicated to skin refinement, so there are ways to fix this, but with competitors like Nano Banana out there that can generate basically perfect skin out of the gate, I know that's one area I was really hoping that Qwen Image Edit 2511 would maybe excel at or do better than its predecessor in, but so far this doesn't seem to be the case. But who knows, that might change if you had better input images and once we get our hands on it. Here's another really great result when we talk about AI influencers, for example. Seems like a very easy model to create multiple frames of your character with, and again, I think the devil's in the details here, right? What I really like about Nano Banana is that it maintains basically every detail of your scene, and same with the Qwen multi-angle LoRa's, that also did a great job. And so we can see that trend remains here. We can see these kind of spots are present in the output image as well, even down to the text on the back of this building, the same in both images. Overall, the scenes are exactly the same, the outfits are the same, and I think this is a really great example of the character consistency they're talking about. They have some more examples for relighting that look pretty good, more kind of multi-angle novel view synthesis they call it. They also have benefits for industry design. And now this is one that I wanted to take a look at really quick, because if this is true and really performs this way, I gotta say, that's pretty game changing. This type of pattern application is something that we've actually been working on for quite some time behind the scenes, and there are not many models that can do this very well. Even Nano Banana and Seedream both kind of struggle with this. So if this is true and can be done fairly consistently, this is a game changer for a lot of businesses, I think, when it comes to creating different variations of the same product that have different textures or patterns maybe. So overall, a lot of really cool stuff, and you can find the link to this Hugging Face repo in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. And now we can get to actually downloading these models and playing around. So here's the official ComfyUI workflow to support Qwen Image 2511. You can find this workflow on our free Patreon post for this video. You can also find it from their ComfyUI blog, which is linked in the description below. Now in this workflow, they do tell you exactly where to find all of these models, and in this particular case, we're using the full BF16 version just to make sure that we're getting the best quality for our testing. But there are already quantized versions available of this model, though I haven't tested them myself. So if you're looking for a smaller model, feel free to check out this link in the description. The full model is like 38 gigs, meaning you need around 38 gigs of VRAM in order to run that model, which is why we're running it inside of RunPod. But if you have, say, 12 gigs of VRAM, this Q4 version or this Q4KM version might be good for you, and that's kind of a good way to tell what model you can run. Compare the size of the model against how much VRAM you have and pick one that's pretty close to what you have. There's also a Lightning LoRa already available for this model that is also linked in the description. This basically just lets us run the model a lot quicker with lower steps and lower CFG, so definitely a great addition if you're looking to speed up your generation process. So we can see we have the Lightning LoRa enabled here. Good news too, if you already were using 2509, the clip and VAE are staying the same, which is really great to see, and really not too much changed in this workflow relative to the 2509 version. Looks like maybe just a couple new nodes introduced here labeled as beta. So in one of our last videos, we talked about creating your own LoRa dataset, and we did that using Nano Banana and Seedream. And so I did get some questions on what is a free alternative to do the same type of thing. And so the first thing I wanted to test is how easily we can change expressions, change poses, maintain character consistency, and skin detail. So here is the original input image. We can see quite a bit of detail. The skin looks really good. Overall, a very realistic image. We basically just want to change her expression maybe. So we can see the result that we get is something like this. And so now definitely still got that Qwen plasticky look for sure. I think it's a lot better than the 2509 model. I know there was a Qwen Image skin LoRa that hopefully will be built for this model too that seemed to do a really good job, but kind of base right out of the gate, it's not fantastic relative to what we typically see with Nano Banana, for example. But at the same time, it's also not bad. I mean, I would definitely use this for my LoRa training. Maybe I would do a skin refinement pass before using the image, but definitely usable for sure. Now let's try changing her pose a little bit as well as the expression. So we'll say change the woman's pose to be turned to the left of the frame. She's looking at the camera with a soft frown and sad look. So we'll go ahead and give this a run, see how that turns out. You know what? Yeah, I mean, that's not bad. It definitely follows the prompt really well. I mean, overall, the quality's not terrible. It's really just the skin. So I think maybe as the LoRa developers get their hands on this and the guy or girl who originally created the skin LoRa for Qwen gets on this, I think maybe we'll see some better results. But overall, it's not bad. It's just not necessarily as good as I would like it to be, I think. But in terms of creating datasets, I think this is definitely usable. And for our Patreon members, I will be creating a LoRa dataset creator using this Qwen Image Edit 2511 version as a replacement for the Nano Banana Seedream workflow we talked about in our LoRa dataset creation video. Now, I also did a quick attempt trying to use a control net. Now, typically we actually apply the control net within the generation process. Here, we're just adding it as a reference image. So we can see down here, I have this image of this lady that was generated using our infinite consistent character workflow on Silent Snow AI. And so we basically source a open pose from this image at a 1024 resolution, so pretty big. We'll take the original input image that we looked at. For our prompt, we just say change the pose and angle of the subject in image 1 to match the pose provided in image 2. Keep the lighting and environment of image 1. And so we can see the result is not great. Definitely did not keep the background of image 1. If we compare this against the open pose, I mean, honestly, it's not bad. So here's the open pose. We can see that the legs are kind of left out, so I'm okay with this kind of adaptation from the open pose. But overall, it's not an exact match. It's pretty close. Again, I didn't expect this to work fully. It was mostly just a test on if we could do this or not, and so far the answer seems to be no. Now we'll try a multi-person image, as that's something that they said was doable. And again, I made sure that both of these input images have relatively good skin detail, so we can get a good understanding of how that works relative to the example images that they were showing us. So for this prompt, we'll say the two women are in frame of an iPhone style selfie image. A serene resort beachfront can be vaguely seen in the background. Golden hour lighting with natural amateur style photography with a subtle grain. And another thing I wanted to call out is, you could probably add Qwen VL to this, for example, and get much better prompts. I'm really just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks right now. And so here's our result, and honestly, I'm not horribly annoyed with this. This is artifacting that we typically see with these types of models. Seedream does this a lot. Nano Banana likes to do this a lot when it comes to selfie style images. They all like to add this kind of like iPhone cutout, which, going back to what I was saying, with better prompting, you could probably avoid this and get something much closer. We're really just testing here. But overall, I'm not upset with this result, really. I mean, it's not bad. Quality, again, is not great, really. The skin doesn't look horrible. I honestly think that this is probably better than the other image that we looked at, just because the subjects are a little bit further away. You can kind of get away with lower skin detail, but still not maybe on par with what we could get from Nano Banana 2, I think. Still though, not bad. One thing I did want to point out is the eye consistency. So when it comes to Qwen Image Edit 2509, I noticed this, that when you have models or characters that have kind of really unique features like bright green eyes, for example, we can take a closer look at this input here, and same goes here. We can see it really likes to take it to the extreme. Like, this is not horrible. That's kind of what her eyes already look like, but this is definitely not correct. Again, we can take a closer look at this input image. We'll see that there's definitely some blue in there. Honestly, she more has like a blue-brown eye that kind of mixes into a green rather than like a pure green that's shown here. So again, not terrible, not great. All right, now we can try some virtual try-on. We'll use the same model, just a full body portrait, and then we'll also use a reference image of our clothing, and we'll make this prompt really simple. Change the clothing of the woman in image 1 to the red dress featured in image 2. And again, another thing to keep in mind too is that we are using the lightning 4-step LoRa, so the quality is expected to be a little bit lower. They do say the recommended value is around 40 steps with 4 CFG without the lightning LoRa. So coming back to this prompt, maybe it would have turned out better if we used the default, but I think most people typically gravitate to the lightning 4 steps, so that's why I felt it would be, good to use that here. And so we can take a look at this result. Again, I don't think it's too bad. I think it works, but I also think she looks a little disproportionate. If we look back to the original image, she's a little taller, I think, whereas here she's kind of taller, but also like really thin here. I don't know. It's a little hard to look at, but overall the quality's not bad. I will say that this is kind of a typical result that I would expect to see from Nano Banana, for example. Like I said, she's a little squished here, and this image was generated with Nano Banana, so all of these models typically have this problem. So all things considered, this is a pretty good output, I would say. Alright, now I really want to test out this easy mapping 3D pattern projection feature that they claim to have. Like I said, this is something that most models have struggled with pretty significantly in the past, so I'm curious to see how this performs. I'll say change the gray pattern fabric of the cushion in image 1 to the repeatable red and green tropical floral pattern in image 2. And we can take a look at this pattern. It's pretty complicated, definitely not, the easiest, I don't think. And even our reference images has some kind of interesting variables. So let's see how this turns out. Kind of what I was expecting. So one comment I want to make, Qwen really historically has had this interesting problem of just completely oversaturating images. I know a lot of this has to do with CFG. So, in theory, if you're operating at CFG 4 with 40 steps, you can bump this down to maybe 3, and you should get kind of a less saturated image. Another problem is that it loves to do these welts when it comes to cushions specifically, which is really interesting. I mean, overall, I don't think the mapping is that bad. I don't think this is how a real company would necessarily do it. It kind of just cuts off here, and this is almost like its entirely own section of the pattern when it really should just kind of flow over as one repeatable tile. But I mean, overall not bad. I'm not upset with the result, but not as good as I was hoping for. You know what, we'll actually try this same one again at 40 steps with a CFG of 3 and see how that turns out. So we can see that that did not turn out great. I think it's probably closer to what we're looking for, but maybe going down 1 on CFG was not the best move. So let's go back up to the recommended value of 4 and try this again. Interesting. Okay, so I'm not sure if I'm missing something here, but overall not a great result. It could be because of the image size. We're not using the image scale to total pixels here, so that could be it. So you know what, we might as well try it, see how that turns out. We're testing here, right? I think that's much better. Again, still definitely some weirdness, but overall I think between the 3 or 4 outputs that we got for this is probably the best. I think it maintains the actual structure of the cushion really well for the most part, and that's something I've seen these models typically struggle with. The texture looks correct and we don't seem to be completely blown out and oversaturated, and you guys got a little view into how your settings can impact your generation. So that in mind, I think we'll kind of continue with this approach instead of using the lightning. Now we'll try something a little different here. I want to try and recolor this image into a different palette. Now again, keep in mind that this image is 5400 by 5400, so we definitely want to make sure our scale to total pixels is on, which will basically scale this input to work with the Qwen Image 2511 model. And then we'll change our prompt, recolor the blue floral pattern in image 1 with the color palette in image 2. Again, we'll keep our lightning lure off and still stay at the recommended 40 steps and 4 CFG. Yeah, again, you know, not the best result, not quite what I was looking for. I mean, did it do it? Yeah, I would say that the texture's probably been recolored. You can put these side by side and really take a comparison here. So looking at some of these main identifying features, it looks like it kept them correct. All the flowers are still in the right place, and at first glance it definitely looks like the same pattern. I mean, again, overall I'm not too upset with this, but maybe we need to try a different palette. Let's go for something a little more extreme, like this kind of red orange sunset vibe. All right, there we go. Now that's a lot better. I think that's a lot closer to what I was looking for. I think a little too monotone for me, but I think it also makes sense just given the pattern. There's realistically like 3 colors in here. So overall, I'd say that's pretty good. I mean, can't complain about this result. I mean, it took a little bit of effort to get there, but not bad. So for the sake of time limit, we're going to cut it here. I think a lot of interesting results from this model so far. Overall, my first impressions, this is a warm welcome, but a bit of a disappointing release so far. I think as the community starts to get on this, as we get new LoRa's, I think that this model is going to become very valuable, just like the 2509 model was. But yeah, first impressions are, you know, okay. I'm not horribly impressed. I'm not horribly disappointed either though. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. What are your experiences testing this model so far? What are some cool use cases that you found for it? And again, all the resources you need to start running this yourself can be found in the description below and also on our free Patreon post for this video. And again, for our paid Patreon members, we'll be creating a new dataset creation workflow for you guys leveraging this model. But that's it. Thank you guys for sticking around. Merry Christmas to those who celebrate, and an early Happy New Year to all of you. I will be seeing you guys in 2026.